Debates and Public Policy. Just so you are aware, I've turned a recording on now, so your picture, your voice will be captured on the recording. If you would like to engage with the speakers and ask questions, you can raise your hand or you can use the chat function. So maybe without further ado, I hand over to Jacqueline, who's the session organizer and chair. Thank you, Jacqueline.
Hi, sorry, I was just working out how to unmute then. It's a totally different system than Zoom. So welcome everybody. I would like to, before we do start, just to ask Professor Helen Morton-Smith just to say a welcome, if that would be okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Jacqueline, for organising this. CIMR is a broad church of academics, policymakers and practitioners. And as our last event, the head of department, when he did his welcomes, said he was surprised at CIMR's commitment to equality, diversity and inclusion. And a lot of that is to do with the work that Jacqueline is doing and Marion, my deputy director of this. And we want to learn from you, the panelists, about what we should be doing to make the voices of people from different backgrounds heard in the policy-making circles. So John Potter is very much part of the international policy community. So we are looking to hear voices and share what people say in national and international audiences. And CIMR is very much an international organisation. So that's my soapbox, but thank you very much for joining us, and thank you to the audience for joining us too. And we hope that there'll be questions for the panel after everybody's given their presentations. But thank you, Marion. Thank you, Jacqueline.
Thank you very much, Helen. So again, welcome. And we've pitched this session as well, and it's fallen very nicely in the middle of Global Entrepreneurship Week. And this session will also be uploaded to the platform as one of the events that's taken place globally to celebrate, for our context, inclusive entrepreneurship. So if we make a start. So as the Road to Wonder summary report is released in the UK, the study that stems from a recognition of the current barriers to innovation and entrepreneurship faced by disabled people, as well as the socio-economic benefits of finding ways to overcome them. And we have put a link for people that have booked on today to the summary report. This unique insight moves us closer to creating the 2030 agenda paradigm shift, where disabled people are no longer seen as burdens to society, but contributing citizens who, when appropriately resourced, can not only contribute, but lead on the creation of innovation and enterprise. As academia in the field of inclusive entrepreneurship grows, the debate is no longer focusing on the barriers, but the real and sustainable global solutions to increasing inclusive entrepreneurship. I'm really sorry. This is a total typical Zoom Teams thing. I'm going to have to address that buzz. I'll be back in 1 second. Helen, if you could possibly just talk a little bit about the speakers, and I'll be back in 2 seconds.
I think Jacqueline's got a delivery. So the speakers, what Jacqueline has done is invite people to speak about their own experience of entrepreneurship. And as you'll see from the biography, Dr. Potter is leading a lot of work within the OECD on missing entrepreneurs. And he's also been producing reports and policy briefings on disabled entrepreneurs. So what we're hoping for is this panel that will speak to each other as well as to the people who are attending and listening to the debate. Okay.
I do apologise. I did give warning to that, but I actually was hoping it wouldn't happen. Okay. But excuse me if I continue. Right. So the debate is no longer focuses on the barriers, but the real and sustainable global solutions to increasing inclusive entrepreneurship. We're joined today by Dr. John Potter, Rachel Parker, Sassy Wyatt, Sara McKee, and Shani Dhanda, who's done a pre-recorded insert for us as we further this exciting discussion. People's bios will also be in the chat today for you as well. And I'm hoping that the speakers will take opportunity to share their work as well and any upcoming things that people might be interested in. We know this sector faces significant barriers, but today's not about that. It's a time to celebrate the endless possibilities inclusive entrepreneurship brings to the ecosystem, particularly when those who face barriers are taking leading roles within it. We want to celebrate and shine a spotlight on this sector at this important event today. And really, we don't want to do many more introductions because what we want to do today is hear from our entrepreneurs and Dr. Potter. So I'm going to invite straight away to respond to the question that we shared with our panellists. We're wanting to know from all of our panellists where they started, where they are now, and in particular, what do they think needs to change to upscale this sector? And I'm going to invite Rachel Parker to start our discussion today. Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah, okay. So as Jacqueline said, I'm Rachel, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Frangipan Bakery, a gluten-free bakery based in the Scottish Borders and on a mission to close the disability employment gap with a particular focus on neurodivergence. So I think the best way to share my journey as a whistle-stop tour is as a series of key turning points that have brought me to where I am now and that were really brought to the fore when I read through the Road to Wonder summary report. So in 2017, that's when I received my autism diagnosis. And for me, this helped give me an explanation and gain a bit more understanding of the challenges that I'd been facing in both higher education and in employment. And I was hopeful that having that explanation and understanding would be able to find a way to accommodate my needs better so that I could be successful. Unfortunately for me, like so many other autistic people, it wasn't quite that simple, as most workplaces just aren't set up to be neuro-inclusive, hence such high rates of unemployment for autistic people, despite the majority of us wanting to work. So this leads us to the next big turning point, where it's suggested that I explore self-employment as a way of avoiding those barriers created by working for someone else. And although this is still a big challenge, as it would be for anyone, I do feel that it's the right direction for me. It took me a wee bit longer than I'd hoped to be able to begin making the bakery a reality. Some of the initial business support that I tried to access wasn't very understanding, with comments such as, well, if you can't manage to work for anyone else, what on earth makes you think you'll be able to work for yourself? Which is ironically exactly why I needed to work for myself. So continuing to explore more options, it's made a huge difference finding understanding and accessible business support through the likes of my business coach at the South of Scotland Enterprise. And that's support that is really tailored to me, and it's for exactly what I want to be doing, and it's whatever support I need most at that time. And then combining that with peer support through a neurodivergent entrepreneurs Facebook group, I now feel like I've got somewhere that I could go with almost any question that I could have related to setting up and running a business. And it was through that Facebook group that I found out about Access to Work and was able to apply and receive my award. And that includes my support worker hours. And that's been an absolute game changer for me in terms of the practicalities of being able to realise my ambitions. So rather than getting overwhelmed and becoming ill, trying to manage all the annoying little logistical things like spending hours trying to make sure I've worded an email correctly so that it will be understood as I intend it to be, or spending hours on Google Street View trying to work out the best route to get myself to a meeting, along with all the possible backup options just in case there's any disruptions. I've now got a support to do those logistical parts for me, and that allows me to get on with the actual job of baking and selling cakes, growing the business and developing our social impact work. So while there have been a number of challenges and delays in getting to this stage, it has allowed me to explore more opportunities. Initially back in 2017, the bakery was going to be a private business. And although this was never about me being able to make my millions, it was simply a practical way of creating myself a job when working for other people wasn't accessible. And since then, I've been introduced to the world of social enterprise, and that was just a no-brainer. If I can create myself a job and at the same time support other people like me by creating more accessible jobs, then why wouldn't I? So that's how the bakery plans became a social enterprise. And it's also based in the social model of disability. So although we're working to create a bespoke employability programme which will support neurodivergent individuals, we also recognise the need to change the wider landscape so that the graduates of our employability programme will be going out to work in a more accepting, more accommodating environment beyond just the bakery. So our first big kind of social impact project was Untapped Potential. This was an art exhibition exploring neurodivergent people's experiences of employment and our vision for a more neuro-inclusive future. And we did this through a workshop where a group of neurodivergent people worked through the PATH framework and had an illustrator come to capture our thoughts and our discussions, as well as through a series of case studies where neurodivergent individuals paired up with professional artists to share their stories. And that exhibition has been on tour around our local community, and we've engaged with a number of local employers as well as the wider public in sharing that exhibition, along with information boards that highlight the current employment situation for neurodivergent people, along with signposting resources, both for the neurodivergent individuals and so that they can access support, and for employers to support them to become more neuro-inclusive. And the workshop that was part of that exhibition has also begun bringing together a neurodivergent community, and following this, myself, along with a group of autistic adults, are now also working to set up an autistic adults advocacy charity for the Borders, as it's currently no adult autism service here. And so that will go on to impact even more people. In terms of the contribution to health and wellbeing, I don't think I'd managed more than a year, possibly 18 months in a regular job without being signed off for a significant length of time due to the impact it was having on my mental health. And although working for myself is still hard at times, I've now been working on the bakery for nearly 3 years and I'm still going. And that's thanks to having more control and flexibility in how and when I choose to work. And knowing that I have been able to create myself a job, it's a lot more dignified, and it feels like I have a purpose now, and that it has an impact beyond just me. And there's the joy and the inclusion for gluten-free people that they get through enjoying our products, as well as a social enterprise and our mission to close the disability employment gap and our social impact work. In terms of the economy and the bakery side of things, as a primarily wholesale bakery, we support the local hospitality and tourism sector to be able to be more accommodating to people's dietary needs by providing safe gluten-free options for them. And the bakery itself is creating jobs, not just for me, but also for my support workers. And in the near future, we're hoping to recruit a further 2 members of bakery staff. And then through our social impact work as a social enterprise, we support more neurodivergent people into work, both directly through our employability programme, but also through our community outreach programme and engaging with employers so that they can be more neuro-inclusive. And we know that more diverse companies make more money. So it's a win-win for both the individuals and the organisations, as well as just being the right thing to do. And I'll put my LinkedIn and contact details in the chat in case anyone would like to get in touch.
Thank you, Rachel, and perfect timing there. And again, for those of you that had a chance to look at the report, this is one of the key things we were wanting to look at. What is being created, not just the innovation itself, but beyond the entrepreneur and their own aspirations and role within it. How is it impacting on the wider societal issues? Thank you so much. I'd now like to invite Sassy, please, to share her experience with us. Oh, you're muted, Sassy. I don't know if we're able to unmute Sassy at all. Oh,
I think we can. Let me just see. Here we go. No, I can't unmute her.
No. Sassy, I'm sorry, we're not able to unmute you. Are you able to do that?
Oh, that's silly. Yes, she's unmuted.
Right, super. Okay, lovely.
Super.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Hello. Am I unmuted now, yeah?
Wow,
yes.
Perfect, yeah. Hi everyone, I'm Sassy Wyatt, and for those that don't know, I am completely blind, and that's why technology fails me on a constant basis. So I'm going to share my story with the key points and the turning points, a bit like what Rachel did. Not quite sure how I'm going to do as well as she did, speaking so eloquently about her. I was registered blind in 2007 after contracting arthritis. And I'm sure some of you may know that arthritis is an autoimmune condition that attacks the body. And one of the main issues surrounding arthritis is the fact that it attacks your organs as well, which not many people know unless you're in the medical field. And so I had broken my arm at the age of 7. And I was a wheelchair user for 8 years because I live with chronic pain due to the arthritis. Because it can attack your organs, I used to go in for regular treatment and checkups for my eyes. And at the age of 16, I was diagnosed and registered blind because my arthritis has started attacking my eyes. And that was during the GCSE period. If we fast forward another few years, I'm studying psychology and criminal behaviour at university, and my sight takes a big dive. And unfortunately for me, I wasn't supported thoroughly by the university to continue on with my degree. So in September 2013, whilst in the middle of my degree, I had to give up higher education. I, of course, would have loved to have pursued higher education and the prospect of it. So I tried to apply for jobs in the realm of psychology, even volunteer roles. But barrier for me was inaccessibility with websites, and being completely blind, I use a screen reader, which helps me access the world around me. And if those things aren't accessible, then I can't, of course, even apply for a job, let alone go for a job interview. So for me, I had several knockbacks in that form, and I decided that maybe higher education wasn't for me. I decided to pivot, and I took a good few years to get back on my feet, both physically and metaphorically. Writing a blog, because as a young disabled woman that was out and about living her life and volunteering in my local area for people with sight loss and just keeping myself as busy as possible, I realized lots of people were asking me many questions about how I lived my life as a blind individual. One of the major questions I used to get asked was, well, where's your guide dog? Because at the time I didn't have one. And so at this time, I thought, well, this could spark potential idea of educating the wider world. Instead of just speaking to the one person on the street, why don't I create a blog and share that? That did well, and it expanded because I realized I didn't want the blog to be just about me. And so I used to interview other disabled people and ask them about their life experiences, everything from how they got into the job role that they did, all the way through to how they cope with their disability and giving other people advice. And then that pivoted once more because I spend a lot of my own time traveling. And then I realized that as I already had an online platform, and travel was also a big part of who I am as a person, I thought, why not take the dive into traveling and talking about traveling as a blind person, and my main focus on talking about accessible travel. Through my journey of traveling as a blind person, I've been given many opportunities to consult with brands and businesses. And this is where my entrepreneurship journey really started, because I am now a full-time consultant helping brands and businesses across the globe, but primarily in the travel and tourism sector, to be more digitally inclusive, as well as making their policies and their infrastructure as accessible as they can be. And I decided that yes, for me, traveling as a blind person is difficult. Traveling as a disabled, take the leap of faith and do that. And throughout having the journey of being in rooms with some of the coolest people on the planet who care also about accessibility, it made a priority to me that this wasn't just my journey. This had to be about helping change the landscape of accessible tourism. So I am so fortunate that we are where we are today, that accessible travel is becoming more and more optimistic. It's becoming a real tourism boom. There's over $13 trillion spent annually just on tourism alone by disabled people and their family. So there's a real business need for it. So it's not just a nice thing to do. And knowing that and being in the same rooms as people that can help to make the change is what I'm all about. I really love that I get to travel, educate the world. But for me, it's still not about me. It's about helping to get other people into the right rooms at the right time and helping the disabled people know that they can travel and they can live a fulfilling life traveling. Access to work became my biggest source of not just comfort, but activization in my own business, because for a whole year before that, I was genuinely struggling to make ends meet because I live with chronic pain, because my blindness causes me pain, and so many other things. As a disabled person trying to run a business and be an entrepreneur, I was struggling. Like I couldn't quite make deadlines that I couldn't make. If I could, they weren't accessible to me. And access to work allowed me to take the stress off my own shoulders and employ people to help me from everything, create my social media content and put it online because the platforms online on social media are not accessible, help me with my own website and run that, all the way through to escorting me and supporting me with setting up my tech for events where I do public speaking on my journey and how to make travel more accessible. So for me, entrepreneurship was something I fell into, but actually because I've always enjoyed helping others, and I'm hoping that the work that I'm doing with the tourism boards and even other travel content creators is helping to change the landscape of accessible tourism, that we together can see that entrepreneurship is a thriving community, not just for anyone, but particularly for disabled people. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'm very impressed. You're all keeping to time. It's very good. But again, for those of you that will maybe perhaps look at the report further down the line, if you've not done so before today, we wanted to really look at what was actually driving our sector to choose the creation of enterprise rather than going into an employed role. So I think you've given us a really good insight into that, and thank you so much. I'd like now to move on to not just a colleague, but a very good friend as well. Sara McKee, please.
Hello. I'll make sure you cut me off at the appropriate moment, because you know how prone I am to witter on. So I have had a 35-year lifespan as an alpha female in commercial industries, traveling all over the world, doing all sorts of different things. So low-fare airlines, consumer technology, lots and lots of other stuff. And my husband, who died 12 years ago now, was an incredibly clever academic with a PhD in chemical engineering, but had serious mental health challenges and had no support whatsoever in his chosen field of work, not even in the academic world. So he had to give up work and became a domestic god, which worked very well for us. But from that point, I was always passionate about looking after the people who I was working alongside, who I could potentially recognise had the same challenges. And corporate world, private sector in particular, was not set up to help them in any way. My husband was desperately trying for me not to talk about mental health issues at all, because he thought I might lose my job if they thought, in his words, I was married to a nutter. So the stigma has been something that I have been campaigning with alongside Jacqueline for many years. And I did actually substitute you, did I not, in a Westminster conversation?
You did.
When I was trying to explain what it was like to suffer from multiple phases of neurodiversity, to use Rachel's words, and to be incredibly clever, incredibly gifted, incredibly capable, but almost shut out of the opportunities because there's no support mechanism. And when he was well, you would never know. When he was not well, he never went out. So nobody, even some of his closest friends, ever had a clue that he was challenged with anything. So when he died, and not wishing to depress the circus, but he actually took his own life in the end because he couldn't see the way forward. I spent quite a long time reinventing myself. So as you can see now, I have the colour of hair that I wouldn't have if I was still in corporate world, probably. But I am following my passion, which is art. And I'm not an artist myself. I come from a long line of market traders, entrepreneurs who have created their own businesses in all sorts of fields. Mostly, we eat what we kill, as we say it. I haven't ever had any government grants. I'm a tiny micro business with a little art gallery in Carnarvon. I foolishly opened at the heart of the pandemic, and we are still here. And we have expanded this year with the new atelier and art spa. And next year, this is what I need to talk to you offline, Jacqueline. I'm having a international arts festival in Carnarvon that I'm working with the Wales Arts Review and the RSA CIMR to pull off. But this is partly because I'm passionate about including everybody in what we do. Artists are often penniless. They're very rubbish at promoting their own brilliance. I'm surrounded by beauty. Jacqueline's seen some of it before. We're at the Manchester Art Fair this weekend, which will be fantastic. But most of the artists I work with really struggle to have a conversation because they spend most of their time alone. What we've created here over the last 3 years is a very safe place for people. So, for example, my first artist in residence had a very severe stammer, couldn't really speak. He's now the front man of a band because he loves music. He's a brilliantly gifted artist. And if he's not feeling comfortable, he'll just stand next to me with a glass in his hand and nod to people. But he feels totally safe. I have a new member of the team who has emerged from 2 years of not being able to leave the house. And he's not really had any support. And his friend, who is running one of my other bits of the business, has cajoled him to come and get involved. And he is a master carpenter and framer to conservation standard. So we've set up a little business because we're an art gallery and we are framing our artist's work. But more importantly, Calvin has purpose. He is feeling fulfilled. He can manage to come into the gallery to drop work off. We take the orders. He hasn't got to talk to the general public. His craft is absolutely fantastic. He's building his confidence. He is coming out every day. Even if he only does an hour of work, it doesn't matter. And that's the thing I think some of us are better placed to deal with when we are micro businesses than when we were in corporate world. Because in corporate world, we're all focused on that bottom right-hand corner of a spreadsheet, which is EBITDA for those of us on economic terms. What I'm interested in is doing your best thing every day, giving people the autonomy to run it their best way, making sure everybody feels fulfilled. I'm rubbish as a micromanager anyway, so I tend to attract people who do it their way. They might not do it how I would have done it, but hey, it's still working. So it's about parking your own ego and giving people the space to grow their own business within yours. And I know once people get successful, they'll fly away and do their own thing. But if I can give people that kind of support mechanism, whether they are selling their work through me, whether they're working alongside me, delivering the product, or indeed whether they're some of our customers who come to workshops who, again, since COVID, have found it very, very difficult to mix with other people and in communities. So watch this space, come to Manchester, and I hope that's been of use, obviously, today.
That's really good, Sarah. But I just wondered if you could just tell us a little bit about how you've scaled, because I've watched you grow from when you took that real leap of faith to what your little empire is looking like now.
Okay, so I'm now officially the Queen of Carnarvon. Well, I had a variety of jobs. I've always done the startup in big organisations. So if you want to launch something, you came to me, because I wasn't really bothered about going through this kind of hierarchy up to the top. So I did the international expansion. I've done the new product expansion in other businesses. So the bit that I've learned is how to do it commercially and make enough money. And to be honest, as an entrepreneur, you'll all know it's all about cash. Have we got any cash? Can we pay people? So as it happened, over the years, I've not really got one wonderful index-linked pension to look forward to. I had bits and pots of money that sometimes I earned in a year, sometimes I didn't, but it was all in one pot. And what I was able to do, and particularly because there's only me and 2 dogs to look after, so I can be a bit more at the risk pole, I've sunk every single pound of my pension into commercial buildings. So I bought the art gallery, which I'm sitting in now, the upstairs studio space, first. Then I bought next door. Now this is, you'd think I was a bloated plutocrat, but this is Carnarvon, where buildings are about £100,000. So it's a lot of money on one level, but it's not very much in any other town in the country. And then I had this vision of a multi-storey building where more artists could get together to paint. They could organise their own classes to either for their customers or for just keeping their practice up. So if you want to be good at figure drawing, you have to keep drawing people, and life drawing is really important. And all those stopped during lockdown. So I've given them a space. So I bought what was an Italian restaurant, would you believe, with the last few quid of my pension fund. We are now in the phase of, if it doesn't work, oops, because it's just got to work now. But I've got a community of artists across North Wales now who like hanging out with us, who want to be involved with what we're doing, and kind of what's she going to do next. So what am I going to do next is the International Festival, because we've started a programme with the New York Studio School. And I've been a great believer, as you know, Jacqueline, of telling everybody what you're going to do. So the pre-pink hair days, when I was sitting in a council office doing consultancy work, I was buying the gallery, and people were going, "What are you doing?" I'm buying a building to turn into an art gallery. Why? Because I did art history as a degree 40 years ago, and I can now do it. So I'm going to do it. And for me, it's the thing that keeps me alive. It's the thing that keeps me going, because I could sit in a corner. I could just do a bit more research. I could earn enough money doing consultants. I often haven't paid myself, so it's a bit squeaky sometimes. But the reality is I'm surrounded by a group of like-minded people who really want to make this work. And they work really hard, and they're younger than me, so they're keeping me young. And we do strange stuff, and we have a go. And if it doesn't work, we stop doing it. And I think those are the things that keep us all alive: a sense of fulfillment, not doing it by yourself, helping other people to see what is possible. And from that economic perspective, do you know, I've invested in this town so much now. We're creating jobs. We're supporting people who in any other world would be on benefits for the rest of their adult life. And for me, that's a significant contribution. I will never be rich, but hopefully I'm building a legacy.
Thank you so much. And you're absolutely right. And again, we've explored this because there's a lot of discussion around reducing the disability employment gap, pay gap, etc. But what you're showing is the need in the first instance to do that within a very safe space. And that actually, if parliamentarians were to choose to invest in looking to support people to create innovation and enterprise independently of the employed arena, we're seeing some amazing results in that. So thank you, Sarah, because that's a really, really good example. So thank you so much. So before we move on to welcome Dr. Potter, who is the head of Entrepreneurship Policy and Analysis Unit at the OECD. I just want to summarise a little bit what we've heard from the entrepreneurs this afternoon. And thank you so much, because I think what you have done is really painted that picture, not only of what led you into these roles, but also the intent and the impact of what you're actually doing. And as we strive to globally encourage parliamentarians and others to invest in this sector, I think this is what we need to see, and this is what we need to remember. So thank you so much, everybody. And now I would like to invite Dr. Potter, please. And we did ask a very specific question, and we don't mind if you deviate slightly, but we wanted to know, you're well placed at the moment to see what's going on globally. But what do you think is critical to increasing innovation and enterprise created by disabled people globally? And how will the OECD support this? Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks very much, Jacqueline. Nice to be here and to join in with this. First off, some points about inclusive entrepreneurship overall. That's reflecting the title of the event. Just to make the point that entrepreneurs are important sources of jobs and growth and innovation. And entrepreneurs can help us find solutions to some of our pressing challenges, like climate change and the digital transition. So that's the promise. But our OECD European Union work, the Missing Entrepreneurs reports, show that there are some 35 million missing entrepreneurs across the OECD area. Those are the additional entrepreneurs who would exist if all social groups created businesses at the rate of middle-aged men. So that's the challenge then. About 3/4 are women. Other important groups are youth and seniors. The gap's even greater when you're looking at growth-oriented businesses. Governments have introduced a range of programs and policies to support these groups. The problem is that they remain small scale and fragmented and lacking continuity over time. And so the overall message is the policy effort has to be scaled up and better supported. So we at OECD, we're encouraging this. The OECD Council made a recommendation on SME and entrepreneurship policy in 2022. This is actually a legal instrument. This is actually a legal instrument of the OECD. So adherents, which are all the OECD member countries and others, have made a commitment to encourage and support underrepresented and disadvantaged groups to participate in entrepreneurship. And it goes on to say, by taking into account structural barriers and specific challenges and needs through appropriate targeted measures and through equal access to wider entrepreneurship programs. So this is raising the visibility of the overall issue. I mean, OECD's got a better entrepreneurship policy tool. That's an online self-assessment and guidance tool for policymakers. It's got 2 yearly The Missing Entrepreneurs flagship publications with data, with country analysis, thematic chapters. We have policy briefs on topics like youth entrepreneurship, refugee entrepreneurship, and so on. We have a Youth Entrepreneurship Policy Academy, which is for policymakers and youth entrepreneur networks to engage together and help design policy. So now on people with disabilities. This is one of the groups that we cover in our inclusive entrepreneurship work. But they don't get such a high profile as the groups such as women and youth. And I think it's probably for 2 reasons. I think one reason is it's much more difficult to get data on disabled entrepreneurs and the barriers they face than those other groups. It's difficult for us to get statistical data that we can report in publications. And also, I think it's because there are not such strong policies for disabled entrepreneurs in OECD countries as compared to the other target groups, seniors, immigrants, women, youth. It's time for it to change, I think, and that's what we're trying to do in this event. Nearly 1 in 5 people in OECD countries live with a form of disability. The number of people with a disability is increasing due to population aging. Now, about 1 in 7 of people with a disability who work are self-employed. And so we can take from that self-employment is viable for many people with disabilities, and that there is substantial untapped entrepreneurship and innovation potential in the group. And I think it's important that the Road to Wonder highlights these points for the UK. I think it's right that it recognises the current barriers to innovation and entrepreneurship by disabled people, and that it recognises the benefits that will be had by all people from overcoming them. So the OECD shares the vision of that report, not seeing disabled people as burdens to society, but as contributing citizens who could be leaders in innovation and enterprise. And we're on board with that. We have a number of OECD messages on what can be done to increase entrepreneurship and innovation by people with disabilities. And this year we produced a new policy brief called Supporting People with Disabilities in Entrepreneurship. It updates a previous paper we did in 2014. I think there are 5 main points. There are 5 points to make. Number 1, action, is to what we call build an entrepreneurial identity. And so we say that governments should raise awareness about the potential of entrepreneurship in disability and entrepreneurship strategies. So where there's a government document about disability or a government document about entrepreneurship, there should be an element of disabled people in there. That's one thing. Another thing is role models of people with different profiles, different types and severities of disability. Also under this is awareness raising and training for business support providers, for enterprise agencies on disability and the opportunities and the necessary actions for them. That's point 1. Point 2 is to use training and coaching schemes. And they would be for business management, skills development, and building business networks. It's one of the most common forms of intervention to support people with disabilities in entrepreneurship. But there are schemes like there's one called Enterability in Germany that suggests that relatively more intensive support is needed, such as coaching, to address individual needs, and that it's very important to focus on network building. Another approach is the virtual business incubator, which can offer peer-to-peer networking, remote mentoring, tools for business planning. So that's number 2. Number 3, you'd have guessed, is offer financial support. Offer financial support in increasing amounts based on demonstrated success. The 2 most common approaches are grants and microfinance. And the grants, they need to be targeted onto sustainable ideas, good business ideas, and accompanied by training and coaching. And increasing amounts of support can be provided as critical business milestones are passed. Microfinance can be offered too for amounts typically less than €25,000, maybe £20,000, potentially with subsidised interest rates. Governments can also provide temporary indirect financial support through reduced income tax and social security payments. A fourth thing is to adjust the delivery of the existing entrepreneurship support schemes to the capabilities of different participants. So people with disabilities might need support that has a different intensity and pace than is typically used in an entrepreneurship scheme. And so they have to be made more flexible. Business incubators are another option, but very few have been designed for people with disabilities. There is an example, the Good Incubator in Australia, and it gets in support from non-profit and for-profit partners, and providing financial support to them, to disability organisations, can be quite an effective way of operating. And then the last, the fifth point in our plan in this area is to ensure pathways back to income support schemes. So fear of failure is a barrier to entrepreneurship for people with disabilities, because there's uncertainties about the implications of making earnings in self-employment for their income support, and particularly if the business goes wrong. And so, the income support systems need to be adapted to this. Some countries like Ireland address it with a bridging allowance that provides a basic financial support for a time while the entrepreneur develops and tests their business. And you can go back onto the income support at any time if you need to move out of the business. So just to wrap it all up, some success factors. I mean, one thing is that the entrepreneurship schemes will work best if they're co-created with the target population. Another thing is that governments need to invest in collecting more data on the entrepreneurship activities of people with disabilities and on the impact of the different schemes that are introduced. And we'll keep doing this. We will be monitoring the take-up of the OECD recommendation that I mentioned, and we'll be looking at the role of disabled people within that.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Dr. Potter. And again, just such a timely summation of the, I suppose, the influence of the OECD and the knowledge you've already gained. And thank you for your comments about the report, because it was quite refreshing to hear you. And also when we have pulled together the lived experience of disabled people who are taking this route in the UK, that there are similarities across the board. There are some areas, for example, failure, etc., and there's some complexities within some of the support structures. One big thing is actually when people are looking at business viability and support to be put into place, the notion of actually making sure that any comparator in respect of whether that business is viable or not is based on how disabled people run their businesses, not necessarily how their non-disabled peers would, which is really important. And some of the little nuances around, if you may get support, but if you don't meet a certain level, you would lose that support and not be able to apply again for 5 years. So there's a lot of work to be done, but actually it's a really, really exciting area to be in at the moment. I'm very mindful that we'd like to give people an opportunity to ask questions if they have any before we formally wrap up today. But I did just want to ask, for people who want to know more about the OECD and perhaps get more involved, we can obviously point them in that direction, but if you'd be prepared to put something in the chat perhaps about how people do that'd be really helpful. But I think perhaps we'll just go now to see if you've had any questions in, Marion, please.
So at the moment, we don't have a question in the chat, but if somebody was to put one, I will point it out.
Thank you.
Are there any questions?
Oh, Sarah, you'd like to say something?
I was just thinking, in a previous working life many years ago, I was doing a piece for what was the Department of Trade and Industry in the UK. So it's Biz now or something anyway. But I've always been very passionate about mentors and people helping by giving their time, expertise and access to networks. And I don't think we do that well in this kind of inclusive world we're trying to create. I think we could do a lot better. And we, having schemes where people can access business people, both in corporate world and public sector, would actually help both sides to understand what you need to do to deliver the finances, but also how much we as human beings can contribute when we're feeling we've got that level of purpose and fulfillment, and mentors can help there, I think. So, I mean, I do a bit of that myself, but I think having it in a structure would be quite good.
Definitely. And I know, again, just pulling in on the report again, there's some of the correlations around how the different groups who face barriers have almost, because of the lack of bespoke training and support in this area, they've created these niches themselves, and hopefully going forward that will become more holistic. But at the moment, very definitely, and key findings in the report speak to the need to actually make sure that these things are developed not in isolation of those established organisations, but actually alongside. And again, echoing Dr. Potter's comment about it being completely in collaboration, that real nothing about us without us. Helen, would you like to just conclude and thank people today, please?
Yes, well, it's been amazing, and I'm looking forward to reading the transcript of this, because we will be doing a blog to pull together the salient points. But it's been fantastic. So thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you, John, Sarah, Rachel, and Sassy. It's been a wonderful thing, and thank you, Marion, for organising it all. Thank you. It's been terrific. But we'll be back in touch. Won't we, Jacqueline?
We definitely will. Thank you so much, everyone. It's lovely to see everyone again, and great work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.